Welcome in. Look, if you're trying to take 2 entire years of intense, super detailed science and literally distill it down into a single rapid-fire session, you are exactly where you need to be. Today, we're going to sprint through all of IGCSE Chemistry in just an 8-minute explainer. Get ready, because we are going fast, but I promise we're going to make every single concept crystal clear. 118. That's the number of known elements in the universe. And honestly, when you first open that chemistry textbook and try to wrap your head around how 118 unique building blocks interact, it can sound completely overwhelming. But let me reassure you right now, you absolutely do not need to memorize the universe. We've got a structural map, a core set of rules that's going to help us conquer every single one of them.
To actually conquer this massive syllabus, we're breaking the whole thing down into 5 totally manageable buckets: principles of chemistry, inorganic chemistry, physical chemistry, organic chemistry, and finally, lab work and chemical tests. Let's get to it. All right, section 1, principles, atoms and bonds.
So, let's start with the literal blueprint of the universe, the atom. And specifically, let's look at the concept of the isotope. Now, you might logically think that changing the physical structure of an atom would, change how it behaves. But the absolutely crucial point to remember here is that isotopes actually have identical chemical properties. Why is that? Well, because chemical reactions are all about the electrons on the outside of the atom. And since isotopes maintain the exact same outer electron configuration, they act the exact same way in a reaction. It doesn't even matter if they're slightly heavier or lighter in the nucleus. It's kind of fun to think about atoms interacting almost like social entities, and there are 2 main ways they bond. Ionic bonds are all about giving and taking. Basically, a metal transfers an electron to a nonmetal, which creates oppositely charged ions that get locked together by this super strong electrostatic attraction. Covalent bonds, on the flip side, are like the ultimate compromise between nonmetals. They actually share pairs of electrons, and the strong electrostatic attraction there is between the positively charged nuclei and those shared negative electron pairs. Moving right along to section 2, inorganic, the elements react. Okay, knowing this hierarchy, the reactivity series, by heart is just absolutely crucial. You've got highly reactive, practically explosive potassium up at the top, all the way down to completely unreactive, shiny gold at the bottom. Memorizing this exact order is pretty much non-negotiable for your exams because it dictates everything. It tells us how metals displace one another in reactions and precisely what method we have to use to extract them from their ores in industry. Now let's map out 2 of the most famous neighborhoods on the periodic table. Check out the contrast between the explosive alkali metals in group 1 and the highly toxic, super colorful halogens in group 7. Notice how their reactivity trends go in completely opposite directions? It's fascinating. For group 1 metals, they actually get more reactive as you move down the group, meaning potassium is way wilder than lithium. But for group 7 halogens, reactivity decreases as you go down, so fluorine, right at the top, is the most ferocious of the bunch. All right, section 3, physical, energy and speed. There is a fundamental bedrock rule of chemical energy you need to remember right here. Breaking bonds always requires an input of energy from the surroundings. That's an endothermic process, indicated by a positive delta H. Conversely, making new bonds releases heat energy out to the surroundings. That's exothermic, and it gets a negative delta H. Basically, if a reaction feels physically hot to the touch, it's exothermic. The energy released from making the new bonds outweighed the energy used to break the old ones. Now, to master collision theory, just remember that for any reaction to happen, particles must collide, and they have to collide with enough energy. You can speed up literally any reaction by manipulating these 5 specific factors to increase the frequency of successful collisions. You can heat it up to make the particles move faster. You can increase the concentration or pressure to crowd them closer together. You can increase the surface area, say by crushing a solid into a fine powder. Or you can just drop in a catalyst to lower the energy barrier entirely. Let's shift gears now to section 4, organic, the carbon chains. This is the lifeblood of our modern world. When defining a hydrocarbon, the absolute most crucial word to remember is only. A hydrocarbon is a compound made of hydrogen and carbon atoms only. Honestly, exam questions love to try and trick you with this exact definition. If an organic compound contains oxygen or nitrogen or halogen, well, it is simply not a pure hydrocarbon. And this perfectly brings us to the conceptual leap between the 2 main hydrocarbon families, alkanes and alkenes. Alkanes are saturated. Their carbon atoms are completely full up with single bonds. Alkenes, on the other hand, are unsaturated because they contain a carbon-to-carbon double bond, and there's a very specific chemical test needed to prove this. If you add orange bromine water to an unsaturated alkene, it actually breaks that double bond apart, and the solution magically turns from orange to totally colorless.
Now, this chemical understanding builds incredible industrial value through a process called cracking. See, when we pull crude oil out of the ground, we end up with a lot of these really sluggish, large molecules that just don't burn well at all. But by vaporizing them and passing them over a catalyst like silica or alumina at a very high temperature, we literally crack those long chains apart. This gives us much shorter, highly useful fuels, plus those reactive alkenes we just talked about, which we desperately need to manufacture things like plastics.
Finally, we've made it to Section 5, Lab Work, Chemical Tests. Okay, theory is great and all, but in chemistry we have to actually prove everything we've learned through chemical analysis. This simple, super colorful table is an absolute must memorize for your exams. By putting a sample on a clean nichrome wire and holding it right in a roaring blue flame, you can instantly identify positive metal cations. Lithium goes a brilliant red. Sodium burns yellow, potassium gives off a beautiful lilac color, calcium is orange-red, and copper shines blue-green. Seriously, burn these into your memory. Similarly, you want to keep this gradient of precipitates in your mind when you're hunting for those negative halide ions in the lab. First, you add dilute nitric acid to clear away any annoying impurities, and then you add silver nitrate solution. If the whole thing turns milky white, boom, you've got chloride. A cream precipitate means you're looking at bromide, and a distinct yellow precipitate proves for sure that you've got an iodide.
For crystallization, you really need a perfect, repeatable lab procedure. Basically, you react an acid with an excess of a solid base, just to ensure every last drop of the acid is neutralized. Then you filter out the leftover solid, gently heat the liquid until crystals just start to form, let it sit and cool, and then carefully dry your newly formed, perfectly pure salt crystals. Memorize these exact steps because this sequence frequently appears as a really high-value 5 to 6 mark question.
And there it is, guys. From the inner workings of the atom to energy dynamics, carbon chains, and detective lab work, you now hold the complete structured map of IGCSE Chemistry. You've got all the tools you need right here. So what chemical mysteries are you going to synthesize next? Good luck with your revision, and definitely keep coming back to this explainer whenever you need a quick mental anchor.